We are anonymous.
There is a measure opening the door to a US government crackdown on some of the non-mainstream media. In particular, Section 221 of the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act would punish persons who are engaging in transactions with the intelligence or defense sectors of the government of the Russian Federation. At first one might think this is reading too much into the text. However, as a 12-year Capitol Hill veteran bill reader, I can assure you that these bills are never written in a simple, expository manner. There is always a subtext, and in this case we must consider the numerous instances where the Director of Central Intelligence and other senior leadership in the U.S. intelligence community have attempted to establish the idea that foreign news channels such as RT or Sputnik News are not First Amendment protected press, but rather tools of a foreign intelligence organization. You can see in the current atmosphere, where anti-Russia hysteria has spread like typhoid, how readily accepted such a notion would be by many. The Reds are under our beds and the Ruskies have taken over our airwaves. I don't think the crackdown will stop at Russian government-funded news organizations like RT and Sputnik, however. Once the initial strike is made at the lowest hanging fruit, the second wave will target Russia-focused organizations not funded by governments but that challenge the official US government line that Russia is our number one enemy and its government must be overthrown. Popular private alternative websites like the Duran and Russia Insider will likely be next on the list for prosecution. Sound far-fetched? Think of it this way, I can assure you the neocons do. If the Russian government and RT are opposed to sanctions and you operate a website that also takes a line in opposition to Russia sanctions, are you not doing the work of Russian intelligence? Are you not seeking to influence your readers in a manner that Russian intelligence would want? Are you not engaging in transactions even over the airwaves? And after this second wave you can be sure there will be a push to move on other alternative media that has nothing to do with Russia but that opposes US interventionist foreign policy, Zero Hedge, Lou Rockwell, Ron Paul Institute, Consortium News, etc. Crazy, you say? Don't forget, this war against us already started last year when the Washington Post ran a front-page article accusing all of the above of being Russian agents. What would be next? Do you read any of these alternative news sites? Do you pass along articles that oppose US sanctions policy toward Russia? You are engaging in transactions. You will be subject to sanctions as described in the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which is now the law of the land. This would never happen, you might say. The government would never compile, analyze, and target private news outlets just because they deviate from the official neocon Washington line. Perhaps not yet. But some US government-funded non-governmental organizations are already doing just that. The German Marshall Fund has less to do with Germany these days than it did when founded after World War II as a show of appreciation for the US Marshall Fund. These days it's mostly funded by the US government, allied governments, especially in the Russia-hating Baltics, neocon grant-making foundations, and the military-industrial complex. Through its strangely Soviet-sounding Alliance for Securing Democracy project, it has launched something called Hamilton 68, a new tool to track Russian disinformation on Twitter. This project monitors 600 Twitter accounts that the German Marshall Fund claims are accounts that are involved in promoting Russian influence and disinformation goals. Which accounts does this monitor? It won't tell us. How does it choose which ones to monitor? It won't tell us. To what end? Frighteningly, it won't tell us. How ironic that something called the German Marshall Fund is bringing Stasi-like tactics to silence alternative media and opinions in the United States. So what does the Hamilton 68 project do? In its own words, it firstly shows tweets from official Russian propaganda outlets in English, and a short post discussing the themes of the day. This is Russia's overt messaging. But it goes further than that. It tracks and stores information about others who have no connection to Russia but who on their own initiative reliably repeat and amplify Russian themes. This is what the German Marshall Fund calls a network of second-tier disinformation distributors. What does this network of people with no connection to Russia but who amplify Russian themes do? It reflects Russian messaging priorities, but that does not mean every name or link you see on the dashboard is pro-Russian. The network sometimes amplifies stories that Russia likes, or people with like-minded views but no formal connection to Russia. So, according to the self-proclaimed Alliance for Securing Democracy, you might not even know it when you are pushing Russian state propaganda. Do you see what they are doing here? They are using US and other government money in an effort to eliminate any news organization or individual who deviates from the official neocon foreign policy line on Russia, Syria, Ukraine, etc. They are trying to eliminate any information that challenges the neocon line. To criminalize it? In fact, they admit that they are seeking to silence alternative viewpoints. Our objective in providing this dashboard is to help ordinary people, journalists, and other analysts identify Russian messaging themes and detect active disinformation or attack campaigns as soon as they begin. Exposing these messages will make information consumers more resilient and reduce the effectiveness of Russia's attempts to influence Americans' thinking, and deter this activity in the future by making it less effective. The very Soviet-sounding Alliance for Securing Democracy project description ends with a suitably authoritarian warning, ripped from the pages of 1984, Darkness at Noon, or Erich Honecker's How to Guide. We are not telling you what to think, but we believe you should know when someone is trying to manipulate you. What you do with that information is up to you. Chilling, no? And much of it is being done with your money by your government and in your name. All this combined with the continuing to envision the new Cold War with Russia both as a ticket for ongoing increases in military spending and a convenient way to coax regional allies into complicated alliances. The Pentagon is increasingly interested in building its war games across broad global conflicts, and in particular a war with Russia. US war games used to be very regional, with one or no more than a handful of nations involved in very limited missions. In recent years, they've grown progressively in scope, and that's no accident. Brigadier General John Healey, who coordinates exercises in Europe, says the US wants to prepare for more complex wars with broader goals. Brigadier General Healey said the goal was even broader, saying in the long run the US is working toward a single, globally integrated war game, so that all the exercises are on the same page, and part of the same global war game. It's going to be difficult to boil all the war games down into a single one, since different regions have different bogeymen. It would be difficult, for instance, to bring the annual US war games in South Korea, traditionally practiced for attacking North Korea, into being somehow about Russia. Do you not see yet? All of this is simply because Russia does not want to do business with central banks nor push their global agenda. Putin has been very clear on this. He, like China, has been buying large amounts of gold and issuing his own gold-backed currency. Ever since it's been Russia hacking, Russia influence, Russia aggression and/or Russian influence being propagated through the media to sell this idea of big bad Russia to the people. It's all false. The single act of Putin distancing himself from central banks, and that alone, is what is making him a target. They are and will do everything they can to stop him, no matter how large the lie or, God forbid, false flag has to be to get public support. They will do it. Russia or any country with an interest-free currency can become very powerful and rich in a very short amount of time, especially with a country that already isn't exactly living in the past. It's no surprise why Putin's poll numbers are unbelievably high. Instead of the US bowing to the global banking agenda and vilifying Russia, they need to do what Russia is doing, restore independence. We are anonymous. We are legion. Expect us.